Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the WorldSkills conference. Welcome to Lyon, wonderful, beautiful French city of Lyon. So today we're gathered here to discuss how TVET can help to keep the climate promises. And before we start discussing, let me first introduce myself. My name is Olga Strietska. For the last 16 years, I have worked with the International Labour Organization. This is the organization where skills, jobs, working conditions are extremely, extremely important. And this is the organization which is the only UN organization which is tripartite. We have 187 member states represented by not only governments, but also employers and workers. And that's how we see also the role of skills development as a dialogue, social dialogue with the private sector. So before we go into the description and of the objectives of this session, let me just make 3 important points. We all know that there are great opportunities there. With the climate action, with the policies implemented, with investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, water saving, waste management, there are many, many jobs that may be created. In fact, in the ILO, we have calculated a few years ago that there might be, by 2030, around 100 million jobs be created in the green transition, but there may be also around 80 lost. The more recent calculations actually give an even more ambitious picture. There are many more jobs may be created, over 37, just as a result of the transition to the renewable energy. So the opportunity is there. This is widely recognized. This is the first point. The second point, it's widely recognized that all these ambitious plans and policies cannot be implemented without investing in skills development, technical vocational education training. Nowadays, the countries talk at the climate discussions at COPs, the parties. They discuss, of course, not only investments into the important sectors and products to mitigate climate change and to adapt to climate change, but they also discuss just transition, which means that people are also affected by those changes and how we can make that no one is left behind. So it is recognized, and at the same time, here we're still discussing how we can put TVET into the center of that discussion. Should we prove really that TVET can push up the climate change agenda and environmental sustainability up? Or maybe it's already a discussed and agreed case. So the third point I would like to make, we have this discussion today, not the first time. It's my probably 4th WorldSkills International Conference organized next to the WorldSkills Global Competition. And this theme is recurrent, which is good, which means that we all agree that TVET and skills development are very important for the green transition. But at the same time, we come to the same topic again and again. So how can we break through? So my point here is that we need really to check the temperature of the global warming, but also of the situation with the technical vocational education training, and to understand what actually works, what we have done, what works, what has to be done, what kind of tools, policies, resources, good country cases examples we have, success stories, and then spread that word around, advocating the role of technical vocational education training in the green transition. So today we reserved ample of time to discuss this important issue. And we have a very distinguished panel. Let me just introduce our distinguished panelists. So next to me, I have Juan, Pablo, Davila. the head of the Skills Development and Fair Production Unit in UNIDO. His wide experience in skills development, but also entrepreneurship, fair production, sustainable supply chains, and wide experience across the world. Then we have Andy Hurst from Festo Didactic. He's VP Global Sales, Vice President Global Sales. He's a member of the Festo Group, which is a member of the Festo Group. And Festo is a global technology leader in automation and technical education. So it's one of EdTechs. And for me, it's also particularly interesting to hear how EdTech or technology can contribute to the green transition, because obviously there are very important and interesting solutions, but they are not also automatic. I have then Emanuel Schneider, Program Director in charge of Skills Strategies for Ecological Planning, General Secretary for Ecological Planification, SGPE, France, le Secrétariat Général à la Planification Écologique. And it would be actually very interesting to hear about the French case, which has been always well cited and quite outstanding in terms of coordination of policies across the board. Emmanuel is responsible for developing employment and skills strategies and mobilizing economic stakeholders for the ecological transition. Next to Emmanuel, we have Ms. Jalada Mijol. She's the Deputy Director General of Thailand Professional Qualification Institute, and she has a wide experience in developing qualification frameworks, including regional and national, collaborating also with ASEAN on harmonizing qualifications. She's been also working on digital skills across occupations and investment in STEM training, and also working with employment committees. And Mr. Marko Aaltonen, Head of Unit and Senior Advisor Education, Vocational Education and Training Unit at the Finnish National Agency for Education. Marko has been working extensively on services for early childhood education and care, education and training, but also lifelong learning. So it's children, youth, but also adults, and internationalization of education. So this diverse panel hopefully will shed the light on the questions we have. We will organize our panel in 2 blocks. So the first block will discuss policy issues, and the second will discuss the country situations, challenges, but also solutions which they find. So I would like to start by giving really 1-minute introduction to 3 speakers with a question. So you heard that we have this recurrent discussion. We have been discussing the green transition for many years, and we know that on the climate side there have been many developments. At the last COP there was a work program on just transition agreed, so the social dimension actions have been recognized as an important contribution to the climate agenda, but there have been also important funds agreed to compensate for loss and damage for developing countries. We have the system of monitoring now of nationally determined contributions every year, where a country identify their priority investment into sectors and products to mitigate climate change and adapt to climate change. So many developments on the climate change side. The TVET role is recognized and have been discussed for many years. So we have been discussing the green transition for these years, and where are we today? What has happened since? Have we achieved the goals that we have set to ourselves? And I would like to start from Emmanuel from France, because in fact, France has been always this outstanding case that managed the coordination of policies at different level, national, regional, sectorial, occupation, having the occupation observatory. You heard this morning two ministers, Minister of Labor, Minister of Education, talking together. I can tell you it's not a very widespread case. And you, Emmanuel, come from this planning commission as well. So what is your take on that?
Thank you very much for the introduction. So quite basically, the coming years are going to be the warmest period ever recorded on Earth, according to the UN. So that means that we all have to accelerate our efforts. In France, it does mean our objective is to reduce our emissions by 2030 by 55% compared to 1990. Concretely, it means achieving the same level of reduction in 8 years, between 2022 and 2030, than in the last 32 years. So basically, it shows how we have to accelerate collectively our efforts, while having at the same time, and you all know that, to cope with the financial burden after COVID crisis, etc., and also costlier and scarcer natural resources. So it shows how we have all to cooperate at the national and international level. The good news is that we have a stronger international framework to work together at the European level, the Fit for 55 package, etc., the Kuning-Montreal Accord on biodiversity, etc. So we have new levers to work with, but we all have a huge challenge to address, and we will talk that later.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So now from France, and this very interesting and quite strong example, we'll have more time also to look into that. I go to UNIDO to give us a little bit of the international perspective. We work with UNIDO actually very actively on the Sustainable Development Agenda. So Juan, Pablo, what is your take? Where are we? Have we achieved the goals which we were setting for ourselves or not?
Thank you very much, Olga. And indeed, UNIDO is a sister organization of the UN. We focus on industrial development. I would refer to the last report of the UN regarding where are we with the SDGs. And I think we're not there yet. We have seen that we are on target for 17% of the targets established. And you know, there's 17 goals with 169 targets, so 17% of those 169 targets, we are on the route. For the rest, we're not there yet. We can see some advances on the social part, access to water, access to energy, but what is meant for climate change, we're not there yet. And we have very little time, and as you have seen, now you can see the effects of global warming. Warmer summers, springs, floods, and we need to mobilize. And it's a very complicated puzzle where each of the different stakeholders need to put up to their little piece of the puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan, Pablo. And maybe we're not there because we haven't really invested enough in skills development and technical vocational education trainings, and also reskilling, upskilling of adult people. I know that the system of monitoring, for example, of the national determined contributions is, of course, an important one, but the most ambitious targets cannot be implemented if there are no accompanying skills development mechanisms. So with this, I'm turning to Andy. What is your perspective? Because you represent and you work actively also with the private sector, but you also are part of the delivery mechanism, the didactics. Where are we? Have we achieved anything successful?
Thank you, Olga, first of all, and I'm privileged to be here. I think with regards to your questions you mentioned in your speaking words in the beginning about investment, and that's, I think, very much goes towards innovation. So I think also green skills at the end, that's what we need to bring together also as a unity, is that we look at that all together in a multifold approach. That means we have curricula, skills, and traits, so to say, that are already relatively traditional. I give you an example, for instance, mechatronics or electronics, electricians, where we need to think about also from a youth perspective, how does that contribute towards the green skill? So for instance, energy consumption in a classical automation process, so to say. Yeah? On the other side, I think what we also have to do when we look at innovation is project a little bit that future, thinking 2030, thinking 2050, and how could that eventually, that innovation then create new jobs that we are currently not having on our master plan. So to give you one example also here, so biologization, I think we have all experienced during COVID that there is a lot of stress and relevant aspects also with regards to pharma. So biologization plays currently for us as well a role that we anticipate to play a significant aspect where in the industry with automated processes we can create more biomass that at the end all can help that we eventually have a transfer from classical production areas to something that is biomass based, and that at the end is also a new skill eventually, a new curricula. So I think a lot is also about innovation that looks beyond of what we currently see in the TVET landscape, so to say. And that's what we actually really try to do. And I think we're going to sit here together in 2 years, in 4 years, and we discuss that again.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, indeed. I believe in innovation, and especially for pushing the agenda of climate change. We need technical innovation, technological innovation, but this will not happen without investment into skills. No innovation without skills. So thank you for this. I would like to go back to Juan Pablo and discuss this important subject of sustainable supply chains. It becomes sort of a hot issue, really, especially in relation to renewable energy, because there are many voices that, for example, in the value chain, perhaps renewable energy is not that green. And the same applies to everything, in fact, we purchase throughout the supply chain to make sure that it's really green throughout, up to the level of the producer. So what is your take? How important are skills development in order to ensure that supply chains are sustainable?
Thank you. Skills are at the core of the change, the green change. And if we look at the supply chain as a sustainable supply chain, we need to take into account not only the green part, but also the social part and the transparency part. So there are 3 dimensions of the people, planet, and prosperity that if we look at each part of the value chain, you have different aspects to tackle and different skills to tackle. If we look at the very traditional value chains of agriculture, like cocoa, there are aspects at the very beginning of the value chain that need to be tackled with new technologies, with new forms of doing the agriculture, picking, managing the waste that can bring the value chain greener. If we go to more advanced value chains, it is also very important to see whether we have the skills in place to tackle that change. A value chain, for example, green hydrogen has been in the discussion for the last years, very highly in the agenda. Do we have the skills to really have at the industrial level the production of green hydrogen, which is seen as with a great potential? For green hydrogen, first you need to have renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy. You have to have it in countries that may benefit from sun, but may not benefit from water, because green hydrogen, you have to decompose the water into hydrogen and oxygen. In Europe, there are some cases in some regions that you don't find technicians to install photovoltaic cells, which is at the very beginning of the value chain. So if we want to make sustainable value chains, we need to look at each step of the value chain and ensure that there are the skills there. And now, an electrical technician that installs photovoltaic cells, is it a green skill or not? Because we have to also to look in anticipation, what are the next skills that are required, as Annie was mentioning, but fulfill that gap that will prevent us from exploiting those new technologies such as green hydrogen. So back to my first statement, skills is at the core. Current skills that we may not see as green skills need to be fulfilled. And the next skills, water management, accounting CO2, how can a process itself can account for CO2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan, Pablo. And indeed, we receive now a lot of requests actually from countries, from developing countries, to support them in developing and moving up also in the value chain on the production of green hydrogen. And indeed, this is the whole ecosystem which has to be greened around it. It's not just the pure production itself. And the same concerns critical minerals for the renewable energy, where we also have a lot of requests. So I would welcome also continuing this wonderful collaboration we have with UNIDO. And it's especially interesting that UNIDO also is actively using the private sector. Without private sector, we won't be able to understanding what exactly is needed throughout the whole supply chain in terms of skills development. So this is the most efficient way in anticipating skills and understanding what skills are needed now and will be needed in the future, but also in establishing some type of a dual training, quality apprenticeship. Mia this morning mentioned the new recommendation, the quality apprenticeship recommendation, which was issued by the ILO. And the participation of the private sector, of course, is key. It's a pillar of the quality apprenticeship. So my question is to Juan Pablo about the collaboration with the private sector. You have a very successful LKDF model, but maybe even more than that. Please share.
Thank you. The cooperation with the private sector is essential because we don't want trained people just for the sake of training them. We want to train people that can be in the economic sector, in the industry, and have a better job, better salaries, and be of help of the community. So the role of the private sector is crucial. We're working to ensure that the private sector doesn't have any problem in having people working for them with the right skills. That's why we have developed what we call the PPDP. That's a Public-Private Development Partnership as part of our LKDF program, where we link with a specific private sector and we work together. How can we transfer the skills and build the ecosystem, the right ecosystem at a specific country or region, so the graduates can have the best skills with the latest technology. We link with the private sector because they are the forefront of innovation and technology development. So we take that knowledge and we bring it to the countries where that knowledge is missing. We partnered with private sector, as I mentioned, with public sector, and of course with the academic sector. To put an example, coming back to green hydrogen, we have partnered with associations on green hydrogen to identify what are the next skills that are required and how we can prepare the countries that have already in their vision, their strategic plans to be host of production of green hydrogen in developing countries and working on that element. I have to highlight as well the partnership that we have with Festo, where we work in water technologies, and water is an essential part for the greening of industry. Thank you.
Okay, with this I will turn to Festo then. Continuing this topic of the role of the private sector, how does Festo contribute to a more strategic agenda regarding the green transition? And how do you allocate this role to the private sector, which is key? Please.
Thank you, Olga. Also a very important question. I think at the end, the topic of sustainability stands there on top, which for us is a two-element strategy or path. One is at the end to look at the climate protection and what we need to do there. And the second element is exactly what Juan Pablo already mentioned, the social perspective. So what kind of educational elements does it have? So let me quickly just also for Festo quickly say that I think should be a role for private companies that is so important. We just have to fulfill this agenda. And that is from a managerial perspective, I would say, let's just work it off. So for instance, 2024, we as a Festo group, we will be then already neutral. That's 2 years ahead of the agenda that we wanted originally to be, according to all these agendas that we set. So electricity will be also CO2 free in scope 2, and I think that's a massive achievement. That I think is one element in terms of climate protection that each private company has to do. And I'm personally very, very happy and proud to at the end of the day be at a place where we can drive this. And the second element is, of course, the educational path. So what can we do with regards to that social responsibility? That is for us the answer to do exactly things that are so relevant within a classical technical role, so to say. How do green elements, how do green skills really contribute to a classical profile, to new profiles and skills that we eventually need to think about? So everything around TVET, and with that regards also UNIDO, we really have a very good partnership. So we're very proud and happy that just last year we were awarded there with an innovation award with our technical education arm to exactly look at that future that eventually comes, or that certainly will come, but with regards to what that means. Investment, as you mentioned, investment in effort, investment in thinking about trying out something. So renewable energy we as well have here around at WorldSkills. So I think this is what we need to consider, what we need to drive forward as a society, as companies, as individuals. And I think we all must go out here being part of whatever kind of organization to really drive that forward. And I think that is the role of the private sector.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so maybe we're not failing altogether. There are quite a lot of new, interesting initiatives, but challenges are there because we need to invest, of course, accordingly. One question which is related also to sort of the core of your activity, and you mentioned that we need more innovation, not only on the tech side, but also in TVET itself, and being linked to EdTech. What is your take on the interlinkages between the green and digital transition? Can the digital transition and even transition to AI support the environmental sustainability as well, and vice versa, perhaps in some way, please?
Absolutely, fantastic question. I think there's also a great session tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, that I heard about. I think I'm very much looking forward to also listen to that. But I think with regards to that, ideally it enriches itself. So I think the elements of education and the elements of a digital transformation should enrich each other. That means if we, for instance, in a classical job profession nowadays that we need to teach, that we need to educate, and then in practice in the future have elements of artificial intelligence inside, or of data models that can predict, for instance, how well maintained my entire process is, how energy okay I am with regards to my consumption levels, then I think we're also here really building a bridge in between two elements that of course have something to do with each other. And I think this is exactly the answer to your question, to really do and bridge and again, bringing everything together that helps us all to contribute something to the green transition.
Wonderful, thank you. So it gives us a hope as well. So let me go back to France. So Emmanuel, you're coming from the General Secretary for Ecological Planification in France. Could you please tell us, what is this? It sounds very important, of course, but could you please tell us a little bit more what kind of animal it is and why was it created? I know that France has been actually very creative in terms of the green agenda and the climate action with the Observatory of green occupations and then the translation of that into all throughout sectors. Really innovative in terms of institution building. So I think it's part of the story. Please tell us.
Yes, we love big titles in France. Actually, I have the biggest one, so that means I'm French. No, basically, so a little more than 2 years ago, our actual president announced that the ecological transition would be a key driver of his next term. And in order to achieve that, he announced the creation of a new body of government directly put under the Prime Minister. So that's how our team was created, actually. 2 years ago, we were 6, now we are 40 people, so we also grew in size. The idea behind that was that we needed a systemic approach to address our environmental issues at the same time. So the reduction of our emissions, the adaptation to the warmer climate in the coming years, to address the scarcity of natural resources. We talked about water, for example. We also had to preserve our biodiversity, to reduce the number of deaths because of pollution, etc., etc. And our goal was to build with all ministers a collective path and strategy to achieve all our goals at the same time, because they are not always aligned, and we have to make choices to find the best one by taking into account all constraint, limitation, financial, the political equations at the same time, etc. During 1 year, we worked with all our stakeholders, especially all ministers, to build this path and this strategy. Concretely, it's so we identified more. We are, I think, no. Yeah, it's better, I think, yes. So concretely, our plan consists of more than 50 levers: electrification of vehicles, renovation of buildings, different usage of fertilizers, the replacement of gas heating, etc., etc. Each lever is detailed with funding programs, with new policies, regulation, advertising campaigns, fiscal stimuli, etc., etc. It's, by the way, available in English on our website, and we will publish an update in the coming weeks in English as well. And the idea is then to monitor everything to be sure that we will achieve our targets. We also estimated the cost and the investment needed for each of these levers as well, and try to estimate the share that the government has to have, and the private sectors as well. After this year, we had 3 main priorities to make sure that this plan would be a reality and not only PowerPoints, basically. First, we had to scale down the plan by launching regional conference of parties. So we launched in every region a conference of party to make sure that every territory will build its own plan consistent with the national one. That's the first priority. Then we had to mobilize the business world to make sure that they understand the orientation of the national plan, and to provide them with sufficient workforce and skills in order to achieve all these transformations. And then we, of course, had to monitor everything and ensure transparency of our goals, our targets, and change the plan if needed, because sometimes you have good news in innovation, you find new ways of doing things, and you have to change the plan every year to adapt to the financial constraints as well, etc., etc.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Yeah, it works. It's amazing, actually, because you combine the macroeconomic policies, the fiscal policies, and then this interactive approach, the roundtables, also with the world of business and regions and sectors. This is exactly the approach which we very much support in the ILO. So in all this constellation and pushing the climate action agenda further, what is the role of the skills development in all these partnerships?
Thank you. Would you try? Since the beginning, we had this idea that it would be one of the biggest limitation to achieve the ecological transition if we don't have enough people and they are not trained good enough in many sectors. To give you quite some numbers that we found in our work, around 25 to 30% of the labor force is directly affected by ecological planning in France. The good news is that we found that the ecological planning would create jobs, so thousands of jobs, you said it in the introduction, in France between 200 and 500,000 by 2030. But there will be major reconfiguration between branches and regions at the same time, which have to be anticipated. You talked about a fair transition. This is very important. You can't tell people that they will lose their job because of some things that are quite far from their daily life, basically. In order to achieve that, we will need to train around 3 million people in 10 years in all the key sectors that we talked about, energy, industry, housing, etc. And 90% of them, I want to insist on this job, will be qualified technicians and workers. So this is a key focus for us. That means that we have not only to train more people, but also to renew and adjust all the content of several training programs in a couple of years. Because if you want people to be ready to train by 2030, and they will be trained during 3 or 4 years, that means that we only have 2 or 3 years to adapt several programs, while not forgetting about the upskilling of the existent labor force at the same time. Just to give you an idea of 2 main challenges we face as a governmental body. First, there are adverse long-term trends in key sectors. So in key sectors like housing, agriculture, industry, etc., there is already a workforce shortage and hiring pressure. So if you want to hire more people and you are already hiring pressure, it's tougher. A lot of jobs that we talk about suffer from a lack of attractiveness. You don't find a lot of people that want to be a farmer, a bus driver, craftsman, etc. This is one of our biggest issue. Because it's you don't have only one policy to address that. You have to work on the culture, the image of jobs, etc. And we also need to more closely coordinate several policies that don't have the same governance, the same targets, the same time horizons. When you have tools to reduce unemployment, you try to reduce them in 1 year, in 2 years, but not in 8 years. So you don't have the same tools, the same policies, the same targets, etc. So we have to find new way of working together at the national, but especially at the regional level, like you say. So what can we do to do that? So we published and we worked with several ministers to build a strategy to do that. 2 things that we could detail later or another time. So first, we have to build tools to help all stakeholders share a quantitative vision of the jobs we need and especially of the recruitment pools that exist. Because you won't find the same people and you won't target the same kind of people to be, like, say, a technician, electricity technicians, a bus driver, people that work in water management. So we have to study quite closely the paths, the training programs that are needed to find the right levers to work on and to improve. And we also have to work with all branches to design and implement precise action plans on the right level. That means to identify the key jobs and skills that should be expanded, to quantify the labor offer for each job, to find and to the training programs in which you have to increase the number of people in training, to work on the attractivity of several jobs and to inspire new vocations, and to update the standards and certification of the educational system. And of course, that means to work with several stakeholders at the national, but also at the regional level, because a lot of these policies are actually implemented by local actors.
Yes, understanding what is needed and quantifying that, but also understanding in terms of quality and specific competencies is very important. So I'm really walking the talk, because I remember like a few years ago, actually quite many years ago, in 2012, we had a speaker from the Ministry of Environment when the whole idea of roundtable started, and there was the first plan of transition to environmental sustainability of France put together. And we were quite complimentary to what France said back then. And she said, you know, France is very good in planning, but not so good in implementation. So I'm so happy to hear that actually it did go into the implementation. And there is a big portion of that plan is developed around skills measures and identifying which skills will be needed. But of course, the challenges are there. So with this, I would like to move to the second part of our discussion today and ask our two country representatives from Thailand and from Finland to say us what are the greatest challenges in this transition. So Jelada, let's start from you.
Thank you, Olga. Good morning, everyone. So I would like to talk about Thailand's context only. So what we are facing to this issue, which is green transition, is of course we are a country that commit to carbon neutral in 2050, and then to the net zero in 2065, which is our goal. We are facing and talking about SDG, policy, ESG. However, Thailand have our own actually thoughts, which is the BCG model. So BCG model is the Thailand sustainability goals, and we try to actually save the energy according to our context and our resources, which means that we focus on the bioeconomy, circular economy, and green economy. So the heart of the BCG is to generate income and reduce expenses, and will be the main economic base of Thailand in the future. And production will be based on area-based, according to the context of each regional, using resources that we are easily accessible in the area, and use the least cost, minimal waste from the system, and the most friendly to the nature. However, the challenging we are facing is, we can come to the very basic one, which is the awareness of this issue to our citizens. When we talk about this, it doesn't mean that everyone understand what we are going, what is the policy level would like to go and reach the goal. So we need to, let's say, make them understand what is the goal, and we need the partnership. Of course, everyone mentioned about that, the collaboration between the private and public sectors to be involved in this, and it's quite difficult. We are quite slow, even though we announced a big policy of the green workforce. But we are still, catching up things behind. And the other thing is preparing our workforce itself. We are talking about green workforce, but we need to identify where are they and what really the demand from enterprises and companies. So that's why TPQI is working in between the industry and the TVET sector that I will actually elaborate later on. Yes, this is so our challenges in our country.
Hello. Thank you, Olga, and nice to be here and present Finland. My point of view is straight from the education, because our agency, our office is working under the Finnish Ministry of Education and Culture, and our main role is develop education together with the work life and education providers. So, and the biggest role we are doing is that we are making the national qualifications in the 160 different educations in Finland. So I look to these challenges mostly by this TVET system what we are doing in our office. We have made 4 points. Our president always say 3 points, but I have 4 points, so I have one more. And first point is that when we talk about the green transition, it's still quite relative new concept. And when we talk about it, we have different understandings. We have different understandings inside of our office. There is the different understanding in the different fields of work life. So it's always what we are talking about is big challenge. Because when we have when we have different ideas what it means, then we also have we have different ideas what we should change, like in the requires in the different educations. So this is the big talk we have to do all the time together with the work life. What exactly you mean this in the car driving or in logistics, or what this means in healthcare. So this is the issue we have to deal. And of course, it's still that some people think it's just like collecting the rubbish and so on, and we should we have problem to solve out that it's a really huge problem we are talking about. We talk the changing of the whole system, how we maybe live and what is the work life doing, how we do it, education. So this is the first challenge we are working at the moment. Second challenge, if I think about the point of view of our agency or our office, is that, as I told, we have 160 different vocational qualifications in Finland. And we do all the time work together with the work life and companies. And they have, of course, told us how important it is to bring this skills of green transition and sustainability to the national qualifications. But it's a job we can't do like this. We actually have less than 20 people who are making this 160 qualifications in our office. So it takes 2 to 3 years always when we can change all the qualifications. So this rhythm is the challenge in our work. The third one is, of course, we can have as good qualifications, but if the teachers and other staff in the colleges and education field don't have skills to teach these subjects, so we have to keep care that also the teachers in every level, in every field of work life, have competencies to teach these skills for the young and adult people who are studying in the WET education. And we have found out that there's a lot of gaps at the moment between the qualification the work life is asking and the competencies what teachers are having at the moment. So this is the big challenge we have. We have 50,000, I think, teachers in the field of WET educations, and most of them need some kind of refreshment for the competencies. And the fourth, we have found out that most of the WET education providers, they have a separate persons who are working with the green transition. They are maybe not in the board of the college. They are maybe just the teachers who are interested about it. So how we will get this to the that it will be the part of management system of the education providers, that they will have this kind of holistical idea around it, that everybody is somehow working with the sustainable and green transition. And but we have also recognized there is a lot of differences between the education providers, and some of them have already the managements who are leading these things. But as I told, there's a lot of providers that there is only 1 or 2 teachers who are interested about that. And this is, I think, one challenge, that we have to make this kind of systematic change in all levels to get this green transition done.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think the greatest challenge is the volume. Yeah, the price tag of the challenge, because of course, you know, when you both spoke, I actually thought that a lot of what you are saying actually is around planning. You already have very good ideas of how to go about it, but that requires obviously major investments. And Emmanuel, I think you also mentioned before that it's really TVET where we need to invest in technical vocational education training, the middle skill level, and that absolutely clearly comes out also of the modeled projections we did globally, because this is where most of turnover in terms of the change, job losses and job gains, but also most of gains of jobs will come. Yeah. So let me go back to Thailand now. Jalada, in terms of recent developments of skills development for the green transition, can you cite something shortly, please?
Okay, let me give you a picture of how TPQI is working. We are a professional qualification institute, which means that we award professional qualification to competent workers or learner, which not included in nurse, doctor, or architect, but other occupations, which mean we have 1 million occupational standards for those occupations. So we are working closely with TVET, especially vocational colleges, private or public, and they get used, TPQI is working in between the industry, so we know what they need, and we have, let's say, a committee in a different sector. We have 52 sectors that we need to talk to them, and then ask them what actually they need, and this is one way. And what is the trend of a new technology that they need for the workforce to have more skills of fulfilling skill gap for the industries. And in parallel of this, we are working with TVET, and then the TVET can get use of our occupational standard and translate that from the competency into the training programs, all competency-based curriculum, for example, short course or longer course, depending on them. But the learning outcome should be actually met to our occupational standard. This is how we work with TVET. However, we prioritize 8 industrial sector which actually impacts a lot on the green competency. So you can see on the slide. So right now is just we started to see that, let's say, make the smooth transition into the TVET and change the competency, try to fulfill more competency in formal education or even informal education to use of our occupational standards. This is how we work with the industry and enterprises in our country.
Thank you. Well, now I have these 3 points, so I'm at the same level with our president. What we have done, again, I look it from the point of view from what our office is doing in Finland. So all these vocational qualifications, I talk about now this little bit more than 40 of these, which are mostly for the young people when they come to the vet college and they make this vocational qualification. All of the qualifications we have now, sustainable development and green transition, added so that everybody has to have it like it's one competence point, and then they can have obligatory studies for more. These are these long life studies, and then we have this kind of optional unit, which is part of the vocational units, that this kind of working with the climate responsibility. So you can, whatever field you are studying, you can take this part as a part of your studies, and then it's provider will make it that it's from the field you are studying. So this is what we have done in the vocational qualifications. And at the moment, we are working with the further and special vocational qualification, which we have a little bit more than 100, to make to all of these 2 different kind of optional units everybody can take as a part of the studies. And then we have as an agency of education, we have also developed the teachers' skills. This way that we have giving some kind of money for the teacher education, which is this kind of in-job education that they can learn it while they are teaching and working in the providers. So this is the maybe one quite important thing. But as I told, there's quite a lot of these teachers, so providers should also do education for this thing. And the third point is that we have developed a roadmap for sustainable development and green transition in VET in 2022 and 23. And this is done together with the providers. More than 60 providers was doing it. So it's giving the framework, what are the skills teachers should have, what the different workers and in the providers should have, and also what are these kind of strategy level for the VET providers. And now we're having a second part from it. It's starting that we try to get all these 140 providers we have in Finland to that they will take this roadmap to use. So this is this 3 solutions I now have point up.
Thank you so much. Very interesting example, also because everybody knows about the excellence of the Finnish system of education. It's so often cited. I think it's interesting to learn. But what is also interesting that from these 2 examples, we actually see also the main approaches, because of course, again, the size of the question is huge. Therefore, we really need to review all competency standards. And that takes time, of course, because that requires involvement of the private sector, that requires involvement of the experts also from the side of the design of curricula and training providers as well. So therefore, there might be some sort of hands-on solutions by creating competency standards for short training courses, like in Thailand, or modules, units that may be undertaken by the whole group of occupations, across occupations. And in fact, we did review these different approaches. We have in the ILO the tool, which is called Greening TVET Toolkit, a practical guidance tool, which is very hands-on and built on plenty of examples, mostly the projects implemented by the ILO, but not only, but also by other international organizations and by partner countries. And there we provide some guidance on how to identify the key occupations and build competency standards, curricula, train teachers, green the training centers themselves, and so on. So it's like the whole policy and implementation cycle for TVET, how to green. So with this, I think we had plenty of really inspirational, but not for no reason in the inspirational dome. I think it's been very inspirational. We heard plenty of examples, country examples, but also policy thinking, institutional building around policies, round tables at different levels, the role of different stakeholders from training providers to the private sector and participants, workforce, etc. So now I would like to open the floor for maybe 2-3 questions, because we have to finish by 12:45 so that we all have time for lunch. To participants, questions from the floor, please. And if you want, you may indicate to whom, and please present yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Gaute Konberg. I come from Norway. I'm also a project manager for H2Co, which is a center for vocational excellence in hydrogen. So it was very interesting to listen to you talking about green hydrogen. My question is actually, after your talk, how is the status? I mean, the status of taking technical vocational skills. Is the status good enough? And the reason I asked this question is because in Norway's case, students, young people, they are still choosing, they want to go in the oil industry. And the reason is because they see it as a stable place to be. They see it as a place with high money. So do you understand my question? It's like, how can we make this green succession more attractive to and interesting for young people? I think this is essential and something we need to focus more on. Thank you very much.
Very important question. That's been actually on my mind during the whole discussion. Let me take maybe 2 more and then we address them all together. Please present yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Nielsen. I'm with the Construction Industry Training Board within Northern Ireland. And it's more a comment than a question to reflect on. And that is that we have talked a lot about skills development, but really, if my sector is the built environment, and I think within the built environment and so many other sectors, we already have 90% of the skills we're going to need for the green economy. It's the behaviours that have to change. It's the culture of the people applying the skills that has to change. So the technical skills, the occupational skills remain the same, but how we apply and implement those skills has to change. So it's very much about upskilling and remodelling what we already have rather than reinventing a whole new set of green skills. It's adapting and changing how people behave and implement and indeed supervise the implementation of skills to create a much greener. And I think that applies across all sectors.
Thank you so much. This is a very important point. I usually give an example of my plumber. And plumbers are in huge shortage in Europe and in France. That's where I live. So my plumber, who is a very good traditional plumber, but we have a ground heat pump installed, which is connected to the Internet of Things kind of appliances around the house, and he cannot handle that. I think we need an electrician who would understand the plumbing. So kind of, is what you say, from the environment, like kind of hybrid occupations. That requires also thinking out of box for the training providers and designers. So let us treat these 2 questions. Any volunteers, please? Okay, Juan, Pablo, let's start from you, and then Emmanuel.
Thank you. I think it's a very relevant question, and I think the question is for everyone. It was discussed also this morning at the opening. How can we ensure attractiveness? Because we look at the TVET on the demand side. What is the industry demanding? Yes, this is where we're focusing. What is it that they need? New skills, they need new electricians, electromechanics, electrochemicals. What do they need? Are we asking what is the young people needing? And I think the TVET institution and the system is at the middle between the industry and the young people. So we still haven't cracked that nut entirely in the projects that we have in developing countries, because as it was mentioned, people from the agribusiness, they want to go to the city. While in agribusiness, you can make a lot of change in greening their processes. How do we attract those people to stay in the fields and have these greener practices? Because they see, and now new generations, they are looking at other things that may not be that green. So in part of the response, we need to work on the behavior change that was mentioning. And maybe at the TVET level, we're trying at UNIDO, trying to embed those behaviors to think green, think about waste management, think about recycling, think about upcycling, that we can embed that in the traditional traits that we are addressing. But it's very important to see how we tackle that attractiveness. And I think I would like to see the examples of the countries that we have here. Thank you.
Yeah, also just to quickly respond to these two, I absolutely would agree that it is critical. Chris Humphries said this morning we need to altogether look at it from a youth perspective, how to basically the youth looks at all these professions and all these jobs. But I also agree to that statement. I think there is a lot of green skills embedded in all of these curricula that are relevant, that are already there. So I think it's our job altogether to articulate what specifically is the chair of eventually making it attractive for a young student to decide for whatever kind of job profile. So just to have a really hands-on example, I mean, at the end of the day, if we make it out of my practice, automation, I can basically influence the bending diameter of a tube. At the end, that has a high impact on how much energy do I consume with pressurized air. So I can be sloppy and not manage this, or I can translate also to everyone how to contribute to something. And that, I think, is embedded in so many roles. Electricians, when we talk EV charging stations, I mean, that is still the same curricula, but at the end you can work then in an area where eventually it would help to as well be a little bit more green in the future. And I think that's what we have to do. That is not necessarily a new skill, how to install something and how to get this going and how to maintain.
Let me be clear. I think, according to me, it's the biggest challenge we face. So, and we don't have the answer to that right now. And that's not only a job of the government. To give you two examples, we talked about agriculture and housing. In agriculture, in the recent years, when two farmers retire, only one new farmer entered the market. So, of course, if you have to enforce greener practices, which is more intense in the labor force, it will be tougher. And in housing, more than half of the people that are trained in the building sector won't work in this sector 3 years after leaving the high school because of several aspects. So that means that we fail sometimes. We fail to find the right people to be trained in that field and to work in that field after that. And if you want to develop these jobs, you have to address these things. And this is not only a way we often talk in France about the salary they get. We have to increase salary. It's not always right, because a lot of these jobs often are more paid than jobs in the tertiary field as well. It's a way of people, and in France we have this different, which is different to Germany, for example. We have a quite negative view of technical jobs oftentimes. And this is something that we have to collectively address to improve the vision, the image of these jobs in all families, the way we talked about people that enter the professional high school, that people that do manual jobs, technicians for the industry, etc. And this is something that we don't have the answer right now, and this is something that we all have to collectively work on. And then in the housing sector, at the same time, I agree and I disagree. If you talked about renovation of building, for example, you have to find new skill, but I agree it's not a technical skill, it's the way to coordinate different skills. And if in housing especially, since you have a lot of SMBs, you don't have all skills in the same company, so we have to find a way to help various SMBs work together on the same house, the same building, and you have to find new way, new contracts, new way to get guarantee for all stakeholders to work on that. You have to train more people, but not necessarily change the. It's not only in solar panels, in some things you have to find new skill, but I agree, you have majority of skills are already there, but you have to first train more people and help them work together more easily. So I quite agree on that. But that doesn't mean that it's easy to do that, because you have a lot of companies with 1, 2, or 3 people, and they don't have a lot of time doing administrative work and to find other people to collaborate with in the same region, the same city. So you have the government and its administration has to be resourceful to support them to do that, especially when you do a big renovation program in a city, in a street or something else.
Thank you so much. I think we can continue for another hour, because it gets into really interesting discussion, but unfortunately we don't have this time. I think we touched upon a very important issue about the image and what we can do about that. And I think it's important also to keep in mind that skills development can resolve a lot of things. It can really be the kind of runner of the business that can push forward the whole agenda of climate change, inform policymakers, educate leadership to take action, educate entrepreneurs also to implement greener products, greener processes. So it is indeed extremely important, but it cannot solve everything, right? So the skills development policies are not just accidentally part of a more comprehensive policy package, which includes also occupation, safety and health, working conditions, social dialogue, support to enterprises, and social protection measures as well, so that people have some access to resources during retraining, upskilling, and reskilling. So all these are very important to implement in order to keep up the climate promises as we discussed today. And at the same time, I think, Emmanuel, you're right. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who was born here in Lyon, one of my favorite writers, he said, maybe I don't quote completely up to word, but he said, things are not what they seem to be, but they are what we think of them. And I think we need really to advocate more TVET, the importance of these jobs. Of course, improving working conditions is one solution, but also telling the world about the importance of these skills. And even where the working conditions and salaries are good, we need really to inform about that. And yesterday, during the opening ceremony, I looked at that in the pure celebration and happiness of skills. And for me, it was completely like a honey on my heart, because I've been working in skills development for so many years. And it was a celebration also. I felt also my work. So I think we need to celebrate skills more. And with this positive note, I think we can conclude. Let's give a big round of applause for our wonderful panelists. We can continue our discussion during the lunch in the network area. So I invite all of you to join us there. Please also join us for the curated visits of the competition. The competition area is something extremely interesting to see, much more interesting than all the discussions at the conference, because there you see how people compete and what the skills are. And I saw there was even an announcement that we can try some skills, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So there will be curated visits starting at 2. And the meeting point is in the plenary room. They will be guided by the different groups will be guided by experts and former champions of those competitions. And then tomorrow, another very interesting day waits for us. Today the sessions will restart at 4 p.m. Tomorrow at 9:30 in the plenary hall, we start from the very exciting session AI and Education, which will be represented by Autodesk, LinkedIn, Festo, and Microsoft. So you are all very much invited. Thank you so much for the attention.